very important part of making the sound your own are effect processing. And in the MOX, we're very excited to introduce to you at this level the greatest effect processors you've ever had in a workstation. There's virtual circuit modeling effects. These effects allow a great deal of control and give you all of the vintage sounds. Virtual circuit modeling is really about recreating classic effects. Effects are very important, not only to create the internal sound of the instrument, but also the environment in which the instrument is performing. So we'll take a really close look at effects and see how they can help you make your music unique. One of the wonderful things about the MOX is the very powerful effect processing on board. At Yamaha, a company that builds professional effect processors, if you've been to a concert in the last 30 years, I'm sure you've heard Yamaha mixing consoles and effect processors. You can get to effects from voice mode from the main screen. If you look at the front panel, F6 is connected to effects. This is a shortcut denoted by the little arrow next to the word effect into the edit screen. So we're going to actually drop into edit. And this takes us directly to the effects. Now on this screen, it's very important to know where the signal is. In anything electronic, if you want to make advances and learn how to use your unit, it's very important to know signal flow. If you hang out on motivator.com with me, you know that it's one of my themes, signal flow. If you know where the signal begins, you know where it's going, you know where it's supposed to wind up. If you wind up with a problem, you can solve it. So here is a flow chart. You read it from left to right. On this screen, you can see that there are 8 different elements listed on the left side of the screen, and they run into insert effects. So you have insert effect 1 and insert effect 2. All right, 1 and 2. And each of these is a processor. Then there's a chorus processor and a reverb processor before the signal goes to the output. Now, to get an idea of what Yamaha is thinking and why this routing is very important, the insert effects belong to the musical instrument. So, on this piano sound, this is the full concert grand sound. If I move the cursor over to insert 1, you can see insert A is a VCM, that's our virtual circuit modeling, EQ. So this is a special EQ on the piano. Now this allows you to customize the sound of the piano itself. Insert B, the second one, is damper resonance. This is soundboard simulation, and this has to do with the sound inside of the box. You think of the piano, you think of a large piece of spruce wood that is the soundboard. It gives off its own kind of reverberation. This is very important to the sound of the instrument itself. This is an insert effect. It's part of the voice. The other 2 effects, the chorus and the reverb, are what are called system effects, and they are responsible for recreating the outer environment. In other words, the piano has to be in some kind of a room or some kind of a space. So the chorus and reverb effect, the system effects, are recreating the size and shape of the room or the environment that the instrument is being played. So you have inside the box, inside the instrument, and then you have the outer environment. Insert effects are inside the instrument. System effects are those overall outside of the instrument. Very powerful, very easy to get around on. Now, when you want to drop in and edit a specific effect, you move the cursor to highlight it, and you can choose the effect that you would like to put in that processor. If you want to drop in and edit that effect, you hit the associated button, in this case, subfunction 2. Now I'm looking at pages of parameters for this specific effect. You'll notice in the top center of the screen, the page icon. Page icon will allow you now, it's denoting that you hit the right cursor arrow to see additional screens. All right, I have reached the last screen because there's no more arrow to the right, there are only arrows to the left. So here's how you get to the different parameters. Now, there are also presets for each of these. Because we know that all musicians are not necessarily rocket scientists, the engineers at Yamaha come up with some presets. These are to get you in the ballpark, and then you can tweak it to your liking. All right, so always take a look at some of the presets or suggestions. These are basic starting points. Nothing is written in stone. Remember, it's your taste, it's your liking, it's your music. So make it your own. So if we want to return to the main connection screen, you hit subfunction 1, you get the overview. Now let's see what's going on with the damper resonance. This is insert B, so I'm pressing subfunction 3 to drop into effect. You can see that the damper resonance is here and there are different parameters. And what this controls is the sound of the piano inside the box, what's happening inside of the box. So this is tied to the sustain pedal. Anytime the sustain pedal is down on an acoustic piano, you're lifting the dampers. You're lifting the felts off the strings. This allows them to ring. And this is what damper resonance is all about. Now, damper resonance as an insert effect allows you to change the sound inside of the piano. So it's tied to the sustain pedal. When you push the sustain pedal down and play the keys, without, now, to really hear this, you'll notice that I have highlighted the dry wet. Dry is a term that engineers use when there's no effect. Wet is after you've dipped the sound into the effect. So you think dry and wet. Wet is with, dry is without. So I'm going to change the dry-wet balance so that it's completely wet. And if you notice, as I touch the keys, there is no sound. Being 100% wet, all right, means that only when the sustain pedal is down do I get sound. And what you're hearing is 100% the effect and none of the dry signal. With this particular setting, it really sounds like you're in the piano box. Now, mixed at the proper or to your taste, how much dry signal to how much wet signal, you now get an idea of what the pedal is adding in addition to just sustain. Very powerful. Now on the full concert grand, we heard the damper resonance, and that's an insert effect inside the box. System effects are very much about the outer environment. Now, the chorus processor, as you can see, is set to a dual modulator. It's a modulation effect. You don't normally put that on a piano, and it's probably duly mixed to a value of 0 because it's disturbing to hear the piano wandering around in a chorus effect. But reverb is the outer environment. It's the room. It's the room in which the unit is sitting. So here you have a RevX Hall. Now this effect, this specific effect, comes from Yamaha's SPX 2000. This is a studio grade effect processor. So in the MOX, you get top of the line effects. This is one of the most powerful reverbs. You want to get in and edit it, you just touch the subfunction 5 button, it drops you into edit on the reverb. And remember, there are different presets. So if you've never worked with this before, you can have an idea. They have small hall. You can see that the reverb time changed to 3.5 seconds, and there's an initial delay. Now I'll explain that in just a second. It's a clean effect. The preset church is reverb time of 4 seconds and an initial delay of 30 milliseconds. What this is, reverb time in reverb in general is about the sound in the room, the decay in sound after the signal source has stopped giving off sound. In other words, you clap your hands in a large environment, all right? Your hands have made the noise, they have stopped. But in the air is this after ring. That's your reverberation. It's the decay in sound after the signal source has completed its travel. So, reverb time, we get a sense of how far or what big an environment we are in. It's very important to understand reverberation. It helps us as human beings recognize sounds, recognize direction of sounds, and recognize the environment that we are in. Even blindfolded, your ear and brain can recognize sounds. It's very powerful. If you're in a completely dark environment and somebody 22 feet behind you and to the left drops a quarter on the floor, you immediately turn to your left because the sound reaches your left ear before it reaches your right ear. You immediately know it's to your left. Now, you think about the speed of sound and the width of your ears, between your ears, the brain and ear are very precise. You not only know that it was 20 or so feet behind you, but you also know the denomination that it was a quarter. You can recognize sound, and you do that because the sound bounces off of the walls. The reverberation helps you not only locate the sound, but also to conclude what size environment you are in. In other words, if you're in a room with 30-foot ceilings, you will sense that from the sound of that quarter hitting the floor. If you're in a room that has low ceilings and rugs, all right, you may not even hear the quarter at all, but you will recognize that you are in a smaller environment. So reverberation is very important in terms of how we hear sounds. So putting a piano in a church environment is quite different than putting it in a small hall. Now, initial delay has to do with how far the sound source is from the first wall. Because sound travels out and bounces off the wall and comes back. You as a listener are hearing mostly reflected sound when you are in a room. In other words, somebody is on stage singing or playing an instrument. You're sitting front of house, maybe 30 rows back. There's a certain amount of time before the sound reaches you directly. There is also the sound traveling out and hitting the walls of the environment and winding up coming back to you. So it's very important to get a sense of where you are. You can create a space. And again, it's outer environment. So reverb is one of those very fun things to work with because you can change the size and shape of the environment that your sound is in. The insert effect, you'll see that there are buttons on the upper left front panel for both insertion effect and system effect. When these are lit, these effects are active. You can turn them on and off as you need to. Now, why would you ever want to turn off your system effects? For those of you who perform live with your MOX, a lot of times you may be playing in a large club. You may be playing in a gymnasium. You may be playing in the absolute worst environment to make music. You don't need to add any additional reverb to your sound because the room itself is providing that. This is why Yamaha provides you with a on-off button for your system effects. You still may want to use damper resonance on the piano because that's inside the piano. Insertion effects are part of the instrument. System effects are part of the environment. Very important to understand the difference because it comes into play when you start mixing your own music. When you have several instruments together, and we'll see this a little later, you want to have them in the same environment. It's like having a band in a room. All members of the band are in the same room, but they each bring their own insertion effect.